At 72, I'd lived long enough to know when a man was hiding something behind a smile. I'd seen it in war, I'd seen it in business, and I'd seen it in my own family. So when my granddaughter Lily brought home her new fiancé, Kyle, something in me stiffened. It wasn't his handshake, which was firm but overly practiced. It wasn't the way he looked me in the eye, which was too direct, as if he'd rehearsed it. It was his silence, that kind of silence that has weight to it. The kind you learn to respect in men who have something to hide. Lily was glowing, in love, and blissfully unaware. She introduced Kyle like he was the answer to every prayer she'd ever whispered. "He's everything I wanted, Grandpa," she said, grabbing his arm. He smiled, all teeth, no soul, and said, "It's an honor to meet you, sir. Lily talks about you all the time." I nodded and let him talk. I always let the wrong ones talk. They stayed for dinner that night. I made stew, an old army recipe, and watched Kyle from across the table as he tried to dominate the conversation with stories that didn't have enough scars in them to be true. I asked a few questions. Where did you grow up? What does your father do? What made you fall for my granddaughter? His answers were neat, quick, and shallow. He avoided anything personal, like he was walking through a minefield. But what bothered me most wasn't the lies. It was the way his eyes kept drifting toward my study door, toward the corner where my late wife's cabinet sat, a beautiful old oak piece with reinforced steel lining and a locking system I designed myself. Nobody knew that part. It looked like a decorative antique. But that cabinet held things no one else had ever touched, not even Lily. Family records, war medals, my personal journals, and, well, let's just say other things best left in the dark. A week later, Kyle came by alone. Before we continue, we'd like to thank you for your continuous support to this channel. Kindly subscribe, like, and turn on notification to this channel so you don't miss our next story. Our shout-out go to Howard Thomas, from Hope Mills, North Carolina. Tell us your name and where you're watching from in the comment section. We'll love to give you a shout-out. Let's continue. Said Lily was shopping for dresses. Thought I'd check in on you. See if you needed help with anything, he said with a smile that made my skin crawl. I nodded slowly and let him mow the lawn, then fix a loose hinge that wasn't broken. He lingered in the hall. I could hear the floorboard creak in front of my study. So I made a mistake, on purpose. I accidentally left a folder labeled Final Will, Confidential, sticking out of my desk drawer. I watched from the kitchen as he stood in the doorway, pretending to stretch his back, but his eyes locked on that folder like a predator spotting weakness. When I came in and made a joke about my memory slipping, he laughed along, a little too hard. By the third visit, I was convinced. He wasn't just curious, he was hunting. So I did what any old locksmith with a history of building panic rooms and bank vaults would do. I built the trap. I wired the cabinet to a silent sensor. The moment it opened more than a few inches, a magnetic seal would lock the study door from the outside. I rigged a motion-activated camera hidden in the bookshelf and installed a silent alarm that would alert me if anyone stepped into the study past midnight. The cabinet? I filled it with dummy boxes, labeled gold reserves, unclaimed war bonds, and offshore documents. Let him think he hit the jackpot. I didn't tell Lily. Not yet. She was happy, blind with love, and I needed more than suspicion to intervene. I needed proof, and Kyle was about to give it to me. That Sunday, they came for dinner again. Kyle brought me a bottle of bourbon. Good one, too. I'll give him that. We toasted, we laughed, and I let him feel safe. I even told him I was going out of town the following Friday to visit an old war buddy. House will be empty, I said, sipping. Won't even set the alarm. What's the point at my age? I winked. He nodded too quickly. He took the bait. Friday night arrived faster than Kyle expected, but not faster than I'd prepared for. I made sure Lily believed I was heading out of town. I even let her drop me off at the bus station with a small bag and a wave goodbye. But what she didn't know, what he didn't know, was that I doubled back home that same night through a friend's side lot. slipped into my basement through the old storm hatch, and waited in the crawl space beneath the floor. That night, I didn't sleep. I just watched. At 2:11 a.m., the back door creaked open. The hallway motion sensor silently lit up the monitor in my hand. Kyle stepped in wearing black gloves, a ball cap, and sneakers. He carried a small duffel bag, not heavy enough to carry tools, just enough for what he expected to find: treasure. I watched through the camera feed as he walked with the confidence of a man who thought he'd already won. He made his way to the study, moving slowly but with purpose. No hesitation, no fear. He was convinced he was robbing an old man asleep in another state. He was convinced no one would catch him. He reached the cabinet, ran his hand across the top, whispered something to himself. I couldn't catch the words, then pulled a set of lockpicks from his pocket. I almost chuckled. The picks were decent, but the lock was mine, handcrafted, multi-tiered, and designed to mislead amateurs. Still, he managed to force it open in just under 3 minutes. The door cracked open. Click. The magnetic seal snapped into place. Silent. Unbreakable. He didn't even notice. Kyle opened the top box inside the cabinet labeled Gold Reserves and gasped. I had stacked it with fake gold bricks, painted tungsten blocks, just heavy enough to sell the illusion. He opened the second box, war bonds and securities. Inside were aged documents, yellowed with time, complete with convincing stamps and forged signatures. He grinned like a child on Christmas morning. Then he turned to leave. That's when he realized the study door wouldn't budge. He tugged once, twice, then tried the knob again. The look on his face shifted from surprise to confusion. Then confusion turned to panic. He dropped the duffel bag and tried to force the door with his shoulder. Nothing. The bookshelf camera caught it all. Every cursed word, every grunt as he slammed himself against the frame. But what truly delighted me was the moment he spotted the red blinking light hidden behind the mounted photo of my wife. That was the moment it hit him. He'd been played. I turned on the speaker. "Kyle," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You've got 5 minutes to come clean. After that, this footage goes to the police and to Lily." He froze. "Who's there?" he stammered. "Just an old man with good hearing and better instincts," I said. "Let's talk, shall we?" He begged. Swore it was a misunderstanding. Said he thought the cabinet belonged to Lily. I just wanted to see if there was something she forgot to check. I laughed. "Cold. Hollow. You used my granddaughter to get close. You watched, waited, and planned. You knew I was alone. You thought I was weak. You thought I'd be sleeping while you helped yourself to my life's legacy." His voice cracked. "Please, I didn't take anything, but you intended to," I snapped. "And that's enough. The police don't care if the vault was empty or full. You broke in. That's all they need." He fell silent, sat down on the chair by the desk, and buried his face in his hands. I watched him crumble like the coward he was. The man Lily thought she loved, reduced to a sniveling boy trapped in a room built by someone 10 steps ahead of him. I gave him one final option. "I won't press charges. But you're going to tell Lily the truth, yourself, word for word. Then you're going to leave her life. If you don't, the footage goes live." He was still shaking when I unlocked the door from the outside using the hidden panel in the hallway. He never looked me in the eye as he walked out. The next morning, Lily came to visit, alone. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. "Grandpa," she whispered as she stepped into the house. "He told me everything. All of it." I motioned for her to sit. She didn't ask how I knew, didn't question why the study door was closed or why there was fresh sawdust on the floor. She just cried, soft, guilt-filled tears that broke my heart more than Kyle's betrayal ever could. I handed her a tissue, then placed a hand over hers. "You didn't fail," I said gently. "You just trusted someone who wasn't worth your trust. That's not weakness. That's humanity." She nodded, but her eyes held the same pain I saw in my daughter. Lily's mother, when she'd married a man who stole her savings and disappeared. The curse almost repeated itself. But not this time. After Lily left, I made a copy of the footage and tucked it into my safe. Not because I planned to use it again, but because men like Kyle always think they can circle back. He didn't return that week. Or the next. A friend of mine, a retired cop, told me Kyle moved out of state. Quietly. I was relieved, not because I feared him, but because I didn't want Lily to suffer further. But here's the part no one ever heard. Not Lily, not Kyle, not even my closest friends. The part he never imagined. The cabinet Kyle tried to rob wasn't the real prize. It was bait. I made it flashy, obvious, everything a greedy fool would target. But beneath the cabinet, hidden behind a false panel in the floor, was a small steel box. And inside that box, the real secret: photographs, documents, a list of names, coordinates. I wasn't just a locksmith. In my younger years, I worked with military intelligence, off the books, covert operations, the kind of missions they don't log in clean files, and the kind of enemies who never forget. One of those documents? It links a man Kyle's late father used to work for, a financier turned arms dealer, to a laundering scheme the government could never prove. Kyle didn't know it, but he was standing inches above a history that could have destroyed the wrong people. And I think deep down, that's what made him pause the first time he saw the cabinet. Some men feel the weight of what they don't understand. If he had managed to find the lower compartment, if he had stolen those files, or even glanced at the names, he wouldn't just be a failed thief. He'd be a hunted man. Instead, he walked away humiliated, exposed, and safe. I resealed the hidden compartment and pushed the cabinet back into place. Then I sat in my study, poured myself a glass of that bourbon Kyle brought, and stared out the window at the maple tree Lily used to climb as a child. She called me 2 days later. "Grandpa," she said with a bit of strength returning to her voice, "I think I'm ready to be on my own for a while. I want to figure out who I am before I let someone else decide." I smiled. "That's my girl." We said goodbye, and I hung up. Proud, not just of her, but of the fact that for once, I hadn't let the past repeat itself. I'd built more than a trap. I'd built a boundary, one that protected the only family I had left. As for Kyle, if he ever comes back thinking he can try again, he'd best remember, what he thought he was stealing was nothing. What he almost found would have been the end of him. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. More gripping stories filled with betrayal, revenge, and unexpected twists are on the way. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's next.